Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Well, another deadly school shooting dominating our news today. We'll have those details for you, as well as the Secretary of State Rex Tillerson meeting with Turkish President Erdogan. Also, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu might be facing indictment charges. Well, these stories and more, but first, something that has sadly become all too familiar. 911 calls from a school under siege by a gunman. The school goes on lockdown. Children and teachers are terrorized, wounded, and murdered. Now, this time it was February 14th, St. Valentine's Day, and the place was Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. The newest statistic in an all too familiar trend.
That's right. This isn't an isolated incident. Just last month, on the 23rd, a student opens fire inside a crowded school atrium in a Kentucky high school. That shooting resulted in 2 students losing their lives and 14 others being injured.
Now, back in December at a high school in Aztec, New Mexico, another student turned gunman shot and killed 2 of his classmates. And on November 4th of last year, a man fired 30 rounds into an elementary school in Tehama County, California. Now, none of the children died. However, police discovered the man had begun his killing spree earlier that day by murdering 5 people, including his wife, and injuring 10 others.
That's sad. It's like a horror movie being shown over and over again, but each time with different victims. However, it's not make-believe. It is a reality that so many Americans are facing today. The Parkland shooting is the 18th time a gun has been brought and fired on a school campus so far in 2018. Well, according to Everytown for Gun Safety, last year at this time, that number was only 7. Not that that's a great number, but the rate at which these tragedies are taking place is 1 a week, but we see how that is rapidly climbing already.
Well, let's look at the numbers. In 2013, there were 37 school shootings. The incidents then climbed to 58 in 2014 and 64 in 2015. Now, in 2016, however, the number of shootings went down to 48, but of course hardly still acceptable number. Then last year ended with the highest number of shootings on campus at 65. Now, these violent acts are anything but normal. However, they are becoming, as you mentioned, all too common.
Right, and that's just in the schools, not to take into consideration what takes place in the neighborhood amongst school students. Well, in 1997, Missy Jenkins Smith was shot and paralyzed at her school in West Paducah, Kentucky. She is now a counselor at a nearby school, and she worries that today's children view school shootings as normal. At the time it occurred to her back in 1997, it was normal, not at all. It wasn't considered normal. Now she told reporters it's scary how normal it is. So we've seen just in a mere, 21 years, how it's gone from something that was totally shocking to the majority of the nation. Now it's become almost literally an every week thing.
That's right. Well, as a sign of the times we're living in, more schools are now preparing their students for gun violence. While only 19 states require active shooter drills, 2/3 of the schools districts in the country report conducting those drills. Now, many feel it has improved student opportunities at survival, especially those who have experienced the violence firsthand and live to tell about it.
But drills will not change the fact that school shootings are highly unpredictable as to where and when they will take place next. No school or government official can truly assure the safety of our children because they have no sound solutions to the problems.
Now, that being said, many are crying out for actions. We have heard it said many times, especially after the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, where 20 children and 6 teachers lost their lives in 2012. Now, many journalists are using their platform of the media to call lawmakers and citizens alike to take action.
RT's Ed Schultz weighed in on this most recent tragedy with these pointed words. When are we going to do something different? Just anything different? Well, he suggested implementing online homeschooling supported by government funds as a form of defense for families, saying, I do believe that school shootings in this country and mass shootings will rethink society when it comes to education. I think something has to happen.
Democrat Congressman Jim Himes from Connecticut slammed his own body of lawmakers on CNN in the wake of the Parkland shooting. When he was asked what they would do in the aftermath of this latest tragedy, Himes said, the pattern will be perfectly predictable. There will be a moment of silence, people will wish everybody thoughts and prayers, sympathy for the victims, and then the Congress of the United States will do absolutely nothing.
While Himes believes the government has power to potentially reduce these acts of violence, he told CNN Wolf's Blitzer in an answer to the question what has been done so far, well, Himes said, quote, the honest answer to that question is not a damn thing. This institution is not going to move. A very powerful statement for a man on the inside, seeing that absolutely nothing's being done to prevent these problems.
Right. Well, another journalist, Don Lemon of CNN Tonight, made the point that while showing compassion by our government leaders through sending thoughts and prayers is important, it is not fixing the problem. He focused on the Sutherland Springs massacre in which 26 people were killed and 20 more injured at the First Baptist Church.
Well, Mr. Lemon said about the victims, these God-fearing Christians were in church. They were already praying. Thoughts and prayers did not stop an oversight from the justice system, which enabled a guy to attack his stepson and assaulted his wife from getting a gun. Thoughts and prayers did not stop a troubled person from buying assault-grade weapons that took the lives of 26 people in an instant.
Lemon continued, how many more times are we going to have to do this? Mourn with people we don't know, but meet under the most horrific circumstances. Well, he concluded by encouraging reform among government leaders, saying, our leaders should be leading, not following, and not afraid to be honest with their constituents, even when it's unpopular.
Well, Jeff Lemon also concluded by saying, we know no amount of prayer is going to bring about the change because, he said, faith without works is dead, quoting from the Bible.
Right. And the thoughts and prayers comment, he's quoting a lot of the leaders that when these tragedies come out, they say, our thoughts and prayers are with these people and our thoughts and prayers are with them. And he's absolutely right. There has to be the action because thoughts and prayers aren't going to change anything.
That's right. That's right.
Well, for more on the details surrounding this latest tragedy and more of the outcries to do something about it, we now turn to our field correspondent, Larry McGee. Larry, what are the latest details coming out of Parkland, Florida?
Commentators and morning talk show hosts were all ablaze with indignation this week after yet another tragic shooting event at a high school in Florida. The death toll at the time of this report had been tentatively set at 17, the number of which included both educators and children. The school superintendent stated that the shooter arrived at the school via an Uber vehicle, shot 3 people outside of the facility, and went inside to shoot over 12 others. There was initial uncertainty at the onset of the incident since the school had just recently undergone a fire drill, but that the reality had quickly set in is evident from the disturbing images of students running and in other instances raising their hands in fright as special forces teams swept through their classes. The gunman is reported to have been a former student who was able to slide off school premises after the shooting by mixing in with crowds of students. He was later apprehended in a nearby city, however, about an hour later. At only 3 months into the common year, there has already been 12 shootings, which makes for an average of 1 shooting every 3 to 4 days. And at this point, after years of these same sorts of stats, more and more people are simply losing faith in the ability of the system to produce change. As startling evidence of what just one bad decision can produce, a man in DeKalb County, Tennessee lost his life this week after making the fatal decision to initiate a low-speed chase with police. It is supposed that the driver chose to flee rather than answer for driving with a suspended license, and when he crossed over into another county, the deputies there rammed his truck in an effort to run him off the road. After that proved unsuccessful, White County Sheriff Odie Soup issued the order to take out the driver by any means necessary, including deadly force. The deputies then executed a maneuver to spin Michael Dial's truck out of control, and it was then that the footage shows a deputy exiting his vehicle and emptying his gun in the direction of Mr. Dial, who was shot in the head and died. Later recordings taken from a body cam reveal Sheriff Soup's response upon arriving on the scene, much of which can't be repeated for the sake of decency. The sheriff can be heard saying, "I told him, I said take him out. Damn, I don't give a four-letter word," and the foul, callous, and insensitive language concerning the incident and Mr. Dial's death didn't improve any from there. In one final excerpt, the sheriff stated, "I love this, blanks. God, I tell you what, I thrive on it." The family of Mr. Dial has reportedly filed suit, alleging that Mr. Soup preferred to shoot and kill Mr. Dial rather than risk damaging his police cars. Misconduct by government forces is also an issue overseas. The International Criminal Court has reportedly received 1 million statements of alleged war crimes from Afghan citizens. The Organization of Human Rights and Eradication of Violence released a report that is said to have been collected over the course of 3 months. The Taliban and the U.S.-led coalition are some of the primary groups being accused. The ICC was established in 2002 with the global goal of investigating war crime allegations across the globe. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Kathan, Jeff, back to you.
Well, it's apparent that those acts of violence aren't just limited to the schools like what we're seeing take place so far this year.
Right, 1 million filed so far on the complaints.
That's 1 million too many. Well, for months now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been under investigation for corruption, bribery, and fraud. Several cases are being considered. In fact, the Israeli police have recommended that the Prime Minister be brought up on charges in 2 separate cases. But in a defiant and emotional televised speech, the Prime Minister said he will fight these accusations and that, like in previous cases against him, these too will end.
In one incident, Netanyahu was caught on tape trying to help an Israeli newspaper publisher out in exchange for favorable coverage. And in another instance, he is being investigated for accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gifts from several businessmen. Now he doesn't deny accepting the wine and jewelry from these men, but insists that it was just gifts from friends. Now, just because the Israeli police made the suggestion to the Attorney General doesn't mean he'll move on it. The Attorney General is also a strong ally of the Prime Minister, so it's kind of got him on his side.
That's right. Well, in spite of the fact that the Palestinians have said that they do not recognize the United States as a mediator for peace anymore, the U.S. Secretary of State said that the president's plan for peace, that is President Donald Trump, is fairly well advanced. Tillerson said that he has seen the plan and that it's been under development for a number of months. He also said that he's been advising regarding the plan, but that it'll be up to the president to present it when it's ready. But that the plan, he said, is fairly well advanced. Fairly well advanced.
So no details on the plan yet, just that it's well advanced, and the president will let us know.
On the brink of presenting it.
Well, Rex Tillerson also recently met with President Erdogan of Turkey in a 3-hour meeting concerning Syria. The U.S. has been supporting a Kurdish group calling itself the YPG, a group which Turkey considers a terrorist organization who are responsible for killing dozens of Turkish civilians and soldiers in the recent weeks. Now, Turkey says that the U.S. should be supporting a NATO ally instead of a terrorist group. Tillerson says that the disagreement between the two countries are being resolved and they are working towards the same goal.
Interesting. Well, you might be wondering why were 2 NATO allies who were once at each other's throats regarding the conflict in Syria, why they made such a sudden and sharp turn to work together. Well, if you remember in a previous news broadcast, we brought a report about the Turkish President Erdogan meeting with the Pope, the first time from a Turkish president in over 50 years, 59 to be exact. Well, not too long after that meeting, Turkey and the U.S. are working toward the same goals.
So they had the meeting, Turkish president had the meeting with the Pope, and now it seems like things are working together with the U.S.
That's right.
Well, keep in mind that at that meeting, the Vatican, Jerusalem was on the agenda, and the Pope wants to be a mediator in that area. And also, as we mentioned earlier, the president is working on a plan regarding peace in Jerusalem.
So it seems like if everybody on the team has to have their mind set towards the same goal, otherwise they'll never get anywhere. Well, lastly, we brought to your attention regarding the Trump nuclear posture review and how the U.S. is wanting to modernize existing ICBM nuclear warheads, but they're also wanting to increase our current stockpile. Critics say this review is making America more dependent on nukes, as well as bringing the world closer to nuclear war.
Greg Mello, the executive director of the Los Alamos Study Group, said in an interview with RT that the Trump nuclear posture review showcases American nuclear weapons, and that really brings them into the context of conventional war. That's very uncomfortable for some Americans and people around the world.
That's right. Well, remember what the Secretary of State said concerning U.S. President Trump's plan, saying that it is very well advanced. And in that, we see what's taking place with Jerusalem and the Palestinian state, the Pope wanting to mediate with the two, being a part of that, and what the United States is doing, posturing, they're saying, to increase their current nuclear stockpile. Now, we know that there'd be no need to do that unless they're suspecting that they're going to use them. That's right. Well, the plans of men regarding peace, security, and safety, not only of their own citizens, but also of those around the world, don't always end well. Nuclear war isn't just something that we are on the brink of. It's a guaranteed turn of events that will be brought about because the decisions of our leaders who have never been taught the way of peace. Now, we saw some of that lack of the education in peace with the Sheriff's Department there in Tennessee and how they handled the situation there, as well as what we're seeing take place in our school systems. And these are just everyday young men and women going to school to learn, but decisions are being made because there's something lacking in their lives.
Right, and the leaders, not only leaders, but like we saw Jim Himes, but other leaders are starting to see that nothing is really being done. And if they don't do something, we're just going to continually repeat that same cycle, the thoughts and prayers and thoughts and prayers and the sympathy and so forth, but it's just going to continue. So at least they're seeing that action needs to be taken.
And it's almost like you can see the world leaders and the citizens as well crying out for help, crying out for a solution. But one of the things that people fail to realize that thoughts are important, but they must be followed by actions. And all actions start with a thought. And in fact, that's something that's taught on a very basic level to our young men and women who are taught the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, that our thoughts dictate our actions. And we can control those things if we educate ourselves to make right choices.
Well, if you'd like to find out more about these stories and more, you can contact the House of Yahweh, and when you do, don't forget to request your free copy of the Prophetic Word magazine and monthly newsletter. Here's how. To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites, Yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, or Yahweh'sBranch.com. You can also visit our website by going to YPNnews.com. If you would like to email the House of Yahweh, you can do that by emailing at info@yahweh.com. Any international calls, you can call the number that's on your screen now. And once again, don't forget the Yisrael Says program and the Ask Yisrael program, both programs designed to greatly increase your knowledge of the Holy Scriptures. And you can find more about those by going to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next, Yisrael Hawkins bringing forth real solutions of peace. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thank you for watching.